I'm Mrs. McDonald and I'm going to read a story to you today, but before I did, I wanted to show you a few things because this book is about springtime and taking care of the earth and things like that. So I wanted to show you that here I have one of my trees. Every year we plant a new tree in our yard, and lately we've been getting apple trees. And see here, this one's, it's a baby tree, but here it has some buds. There's my other one. We have one that didn't make it through the winter, and we're going to have to replace that one. That makes me sad. And then over here, I have a grapevine, and I can see that the buds are starting. This gets me really excited. It's just my first grapevine. I planted it because my grandma had a grapevine, and I just loved my grandma so much. I like to do things that my grandma did. But we're getting our garden ready, which you'll see here behind me. See that mess? Woo! But what we do is, during the off season, we will get some of our compost, which is, you know, basically a lot of broken down, aged horse manure, with some eggshells and chicken poop and things like that mixed in it. And you can't even tell because we get it from the old stuff that's like 8 years old, and we put it in our garden. It looks just like dirt because basically that's what it is. And lots of worms in there, which is really good for the soil. And I want to show you one more tree before I read this book. I'm walking over here. This tree is so big. Behind me, okay, starts there all the way up. And you know what? That tree, my husband and I planted when we first moved here. And actually every tree on this property, other than the woods back there, the woods, they were there. But this used to be a field that people farmed. And then another thing that I'm working on right now is I just reused this old refrigerator drawer to make a little mini greenhouse. And I planted some plants to start. See, I just started them. There's eggshells, and I put dirt in the eggshells, and I put them in that way whenever I plant them, I can just crack the eggshell and stick it in my garden. And I'm just experimenting to see if this little old refrigerator drawer can be reused for a new purpose of being a little greenhouse. I'm hoping that it works. We'll see. Here we go. Ants in your pants, worms in your plants. Gilbert goes green. I love the spring. Okay, here we go. It was a beautiful spring day. Can you see this? Oh, it's hard to be inside whenever it's a beautiful spring day. Gilbert didn't want to be indoors. Mrs. Bird had asked her class to write a poem about springtime, but Gilbert just wiggled and jiggled and squirmed in his seat. Mrs. Bird asked, "Do you have ants in your pants, Gilbert?" "Sorry," Gilbert said. "I can't think of anything to write about." He chewed on his pencil. He was looking at the ceiling, and he tapped on his head while everyone else was writing. Patty never had trouble getting ideas. She read her poem aloud to the class. "Spring is fun, let's run in the sun. Let's smell the flowers and play in the showers. Spring is fun." Mrs. Bird sighed and said, "You're so right, Patty. It's just too nice to be indoors. Let's all bring our lunch tomorrow and we'll have a picnic." Everyone said, "Yay!" Even Mrs. Bird had great ideas. Well, it says good ideas, but I'm saying great. The next day, Mrs. Bird walked with her class up the big grassy hill in back of the school. She said, "When I was your age, I loved to go on picnics with my family." As she hurried up the hill, she said, "I hope we can find a place that's shady and green." But when they got to the top of the hill, it wasn't shady or green. The trees had been cut down and the sun was hot. The grass was brown and the litter was all over the place. "Oh dear," Mrs. Bird said, "this is a terrible place for a picnic." "Maybe we could clean it up," Penny said. "Good idea." Everyone said that as they rushed to pick up the trash. Philip picked up cans and bottles. Louis picked up an old shoe, and Gilbert picked up a half-eaten apple covered with ants. When they finally sat down to eat, Mrs. Bird said, "Earth Day is next week, and today we've already done something to make our earth cleaner. What else can we do to help our planet?" Gilbert didn't have any ideas about Earth Day. He was busy making sure that ants didn't crawl in his pants. But Philip had a good idea. He said, "We can recycle those bottles instead of throwing them into the trash. They can be made into new bottles." Patty said, "At home we can turn out the lights when no one's in the room. That saves electricity. And we shouldn't waste water either," Margaret added. "Good idea," Louis said. "I'm not taking a bath tonight." Everyone said, "Ew." Back in the classroom, Mrs. Bird asked everyone to start working on an Earth Day project. Gilbert groaned. Now he would have to come up with an idea for an Earth Day project. He didn't even have an idea for a spring poem yet. Patty had already started. She drew a big light bulb and wrote under it, "Turn out the light because it's right." "That's a good idea," Gilbert said. "I'm going to draw a light bulb too." "That's my idea," Patty said. "You have to think of your own." Frank found a book in the library about saving energy. "Here's a good idea," he said. "We can ride our bikes or walk to school instead of driving. That saves gas. Maybe someday the earth might run out of fuel, so we shouldn't waste it." Gilbert looked through the book when Frank was done, but all the good ideas had already been taken. "I don't think I'll ever get an idea," Gilbert said. Louis grabbed Gilbert's ear and looked inside. "I see the problem," Louis said. "There's nothing in there." Gilbert was beginning to think that Louis was right. After school, Gilbert said to Mother, "I need an idea for an Earth Day project, but I don't have any ideas." "What about recycling?" Mother said. "Philip is doing that," Gilbert said. "What about saving electricity?" "Taken," Gilbert said. "I want to do a project that nobody else is doing, but I can't think of any." Father said, when I'm looking for an idea, it might come to me while I'm walking or riding my bike. Or sometimes when I'm relaxed or drifting off to sleep, an idea will suddenly pop into my head. Gilbert tried walking to get an idea. He tried riding his bike, but no ideas came. Look what his sister's doing. She's digging. She's hoping for treasure. Maybe she'll find a worm. Gilbert was about to take a nap when Mother said, "You know, a good idea can be right in front of you and you don't even know it. Try to keep your eyes and ears open and something will turn up." Gilbert sat very quietly under his favorite tree, and he kept his eyes and ears open. He listened and watched as the wind gently blew the grass. Then something caught his eye. Ants. He watched as a line of big black ants crawled from the tree to the grass and then an idea was right in front of him. On Monday, everyone took turns talking about their projects. Frank went first and said, "My mom and I rode our bikes to school today instead of driving. Mom says that besides saving gas, she's getting good exercise." For Kenny's project, he had helped his dad hang the laundry on a clothesline in the yard instead of using the dryer. "That saves a lot of electricity," he said. When it was Philip's turn, he showed everyone all the things that could be recycled. He explained, old paper can be made into new paper, metal can be made into new cans, and glass and plastic can be made into new bottles. Then he said sternly, "From now on, I'm going to check the wastebasket every day to make sure nobody throws any of this stuff into the trash." "Oops," Louis said, taking his water bottle out of the wastebasket. For Margaret's project, she held up a cloth bag with handles on top and a big sun on the front. "My mom and I are making these bags to take to the supermarket instead of using paper or plastic bags that get thrown out. We can reuse these over and over again." When it was Louis's turn, he said, "I did an Earth Day project with real earth." He opened up a box and everyone said, "P.U." "It's compost," he said. "It's supposed to smell bad, at least in the beginning. You can take garbage like eggshells and apple peels and mix it all with dirt. And after a while, it turns into really good soil to grow stuff in." He reached in and pulled out a worm. When everyone was done saying, "Ew," Louis continued, "Worms help to turn the dirt into compost by eating it and pooping it out." Everyone said, "Ew," again. When it was finally Gilbert's turn, He held up his drawing of a tree and said, "Trees are important to our planet. They give us wood to make things like paper and furniture, and they help to keep the air clean. When too many trees are cut down, the air can get polluted and stink." "Like my compost," Louis said. Everyone laughed. Patty liked the poster and said, "How did you get your idea, Gilbert?" "It was right there in front of me," Gilbert said. "We see trees all the time, but we never think about what they do." Then he said, "But this is just the first part of my project. For the second part, we have to go outside." "Field trip," Louis shouted. "Where are we going?" everyone asked. "It's a surprise." Gilbert said. They followed Gilbert up the big hill behind the school. There they found a little tree planted right where they had had their picnic. "I found this growing under my favorite tree," Gilbert said. "I thought it was a weed, but it was really a baby tree. The principal said my dad and I could plant it here. It's small now, but someday it will be big enough to shade this hill and make it a perfect place for a picnic." Everyone liked the little tree, especially Mrs. Bird. She gave Gilbert a hug and said, "What an excellent idea, Gilbert." Then she noticed the sign hanging on the tree. Gilbert had finally written a poem. "This little tree will grow and blossom, and someday you'll see this tree will be awesome." Well, I hope you enjoyed that story. I sure did. I love thinking about spring and new things growing. And I hope you get some ideas of some things maybe you can do around your house to help things out. I'll talk to you later. Bye.